every day, what we do at Luca, we sometimes get involved into stuff that we are not necessarily ready, but we have like this big goal of building something big, and I think that was kind of the foundation of the company.
Hey everyone, this is Kyle Walgren, and yes, this is another episode of the Business of Education. Today I'm excited to bring to you our guest, Frederico Bello. He's coming to us from Portugal. He's a true innovator in the world of education technology startups. Frederico has an impressive background, having worked with tier one companies in spearheading the launch and expansion of tech ventures across various countries and regions. He is the founder and CEO of an AI-powered SaaS educational platform that revolutions learning through K-12 students by offering personalized study paths and gamified content through pre-recorded videos. Did I get that right, Frederico?
Yeah, you did. I will explain it in my own words, but that's what we do.
Yeah, no, I'd love for you to jump in and explain just exactly what Luca does. I love the name. It makes me think of a movie my kids are watching all the time, but go ahead and explain just what Luca does.
Yeah, actually the name came 6 months before Disney launched the Luca Kids video. Maybe the reasons behind both names are similar. I was, as the founder, I was looking for a name. I get that question a lot. Maybe I'll start by that. A name that was similar across the world, so it could be used in several countries and languages. And it was short, so I was kind of obsessed with only 4 letters, and it somehow resembles a kid's name, right? And I think that's why we landed there. But what do we do? So we are present in Latin America. Luca is based in Mexico City, and we serve in this initial in the first 3 years of the company, the Mexican market. We developed a B2B SaaS for teachers and students, where we cover the entire official curriculum, in this case of Mexico, for all the core curricular subject like math, Spanish, reading, now English as well, and science. We built all of the content using Gen AI, and then we plug this in the form of videos, PDFs, games in a platform, covering the content in a different way. So for the teacher, the school has the ability to power to the teachers all of this content, and they have a bunch of management tools which allow them to better manage the classroom, save them time in admin stuff like building a project or correcting an essay. And then on the student end is a game-like experience, so everything is gamified, and they run through the game by getting assigned homework from the teachers. So we are present in the entire of Mexico, and have been operating for 2.5-3 years.
So you came about just after COVID then, or
That's
kind
it.
of right through the middle of just after COVID.
After.
You've been able to work at a large scale. Give us a little bit of your background that made you jump into EdTech and then, ultimately building Luca.
Yeah. So as said, like on the personal side, I'm Portuguese, but I haven't lived in the country. I'm now here because my mom is turning 70. I'm usually based in Mexico. And since I'm now in my 30s, since I turned 20, I left the country and I lived a bit all over Europe and then moved to Latin America. My background initially was not related with education. I was an investment banker in the first years of my career. So I did M&A, mergers and acquisitions, with Morgan Stanley in London. And then after a while, I decided that I wanted to work in tech, and had the chance to work in companies like Uber on their rides business, launching cities throughout Europe. And then I worked for an electric scooter company at the time, just before COVID. They were kind of exploding throughout Europe, a bit of like mimicking what was happening in San Francisco, and they're all over the States. And that company got acquired. I had the chance then to keep on the mobility industry. But I took some time to reflect and understood that I needed to be in a mission impact sector, and I always had the urge to build something in education at the same time that I had this urge of building something big of my own. So I joined, and before starting Luca, I joined right before COVID, one of the largest EdTech startups. It's called the Power MBA. So they did an online version of MBAs, which was sold for a fraction of the cost, like for less than $2K. You can have access to a pre-recorded content where you have as teachers like folks as the founder of Netflix, of YouTube, of Waze, all in a pre-recorded online content. And I joined them to launch the company like throughout the world, basically. Um, and then
Kind of
COVID
something
hit.
like masterclass would be, I'm guessing, right? I've seen masterclass. Are you familiar with
Yeah,
that?
kind of masterclass, but with shaped in a curriculum of an MBA. So you would cover
Okay.
the curricular aspect of the MBA, but then with the freedom of the company to decide the content. But yeah, pre-recorded content delivered by experts. That was
Awesome.
kind of the motto. Very community based. So word of mouth was a big thing. I did the Power MBA. Do you want to do it as well? And companies then started to use as a filter and selection tool throughout their hiring processes and also training processes. And my goal was, look, this worked really well in Spain. Let's launch it across the world. So we were like looking at India, Israel, China, some parts of the US, and then Latin America. And I took some of that expansion. And the company, just after I joined, like 2 months later, COVID happened. This was like April 2020, and the company like grew like 3 or 4 fold in like 3 months.
I guarantee
Um,
it.
yeah, and obviously, like, to explain a bit how the idea came by, I was very bullish and in India as an education market, not only because of the density of the population of the country. It's the largest student count in the world comes from India. It's bigger than China, even though the population is a bit smaller. Um, and but I saw that the Indian population, Indians were very keen on as a proportion of their household income on spending a lot of money in education for their kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a business that maybe I came across, I already knew them, but it was very relevant for the expansion. Byju's, and
Yeah.
and and I was like fascinated what the founder was doing, and also how fast the business was growing, especially on the aftermath and during COVID. And I kind of started having this idea. I thought that the business model was way more interesting um, for younger people than for adults on the MBA side. And I discussed this a bit internally, and then I understood that I had the potential to build something my own. And then I set out to build Luca and focus on kids age 6, potentially to 17. So far, currently we are focusing until the age of 13.
I love that. That's kind of the same mindset that I have. I want to go out and solve big problems and scale products and build amazing companies that we could leave as a legacy and something to be proud of. Um, you started off though, ultimately getting big backing, um, from companies like Morgan Stanley. That's am I correct with that?
Morgan Stanley didn't back me. I worked there. Some of my
Oh, okay.
prior colleagues, yes, but we got backing from VC funds since the beginning. So I think we were lucky on that sense. Two like large European VC funds backed the company since day one.
You mentioned a few things that I align with 100%. When we developed Edsoma, my EdTech company, um, I always thought that India would be a great launching point. My concerns was like streaming access and relevant hardware devices, just because ours was so voice focused that that was one of my concerns there. But the density of population and the prioritization of education in India is second to none. They want to make sure that their kids do have access to an amazing education, opportunities to change their life. And I think that's why we're seeing our top CEOs in the United States or our big tech companies are, foundationally from India now. Um, So we are seeing that. You mentioned Baiju. Baiju was part of my motivation as well to build my company. I saw what they were doing, um, but I kind of felt like it was going to be what it turned out to be. I just when I went to multiple open talks to watch them have a conversation, or the founder or his wife, the co-founder, um, I just felt like there was something missing. The information they were giving seemed empty, at least was my opinion. Their growth and strategy behind growth and why they were getting renewals just didn't align. And I guess 3 years or 4 years after I saw their first talk, where I felt like that wasn't going to last forever, we're seeing that outcome now, of that company sadly unfold what could have been a huge thing, that did tarnish a little bit of the edge tech space, I think, because they had raised money from so many big funds in the ed tech space in such a large amount, that I think that it's kind of made it harder for companies like ours to go out and raise funding. How did you first go about raising funding? You had mentioned, you'd raised from venture capital. That's something that most founders hate. It's painful. What was your approach there early on? What were you looking for to really know that you're ready to raise money?
Maybe I wasn't. That wasn't the mindset. Like to make sure that I was. I think every day what we do at Luca, we sometimes get involved into stuff that we are not necessarily ready, but we have like this big goal of building something big, and I think that was kind of the foundation of the company. I started as a solo founder, which I think it might have made it harder for some. In my case, like I work well this way. It sort of removes the friction and just allows me to just go flat on pursuing what I want.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a bit the story. So I started with my initial money. We were like what you said, like Baiju's kind of made it harder for funds, for companies to raise from funds now. I think the EdTech space is probably it's one of the ones that decreased the most in terms of funding in the last 2 years. Of course, everyone took a big hit
Sadly.
once zero interest rates were gone in the middle of 2022, but there they also like shed some light over the potential, and with COVID plugged with Baiju's and some of the Chinese companies such as VIP Learning, they were raising billions, and that helped. So they were it's the two edges of the same knife. So that happened, and the initial idea was to aim for a very big market, a very considerably large LTV. So we are targeting kids that could be with us for 12 years. And Baiju's was doing retention of over 90% at the time, and with a super fast growth. They addressed more than 5% of the Indian student population in the first 5 years. So that was what I was looking for. So basically, in the beginning, I understood I wanted to do K-12. I wanted to do curriculum. I didn't want to do non-curricular. So I wanted something core that could help students like perform better at exams, because I understood that where the pain point and the willingness to pay was. And I wanted to build something that could actually improve grades. And we were seeing at that time a big correlation of video content that was pre-recorded and startups that were doing well in the EdTech space. We had Descomplica helping students in Brazil getting into university. We had Baiju's in India, and then VipKid as well. And I was working for a company which was building a lot of video, which was the Power MBA. So I sort of had the inputs and the insights of scaling a company, even though I didn't stay for too long at the Power MBA. And we were going after a very big market. And then I thought India was too crowded. China had the regulation it always has, and 2 years later the EdTech market completely collapsed. It doesn't exist anymore. It's forbidden by the government to do digital education in China. And then we had Indonesia was big, Pakistan was big, the US obviously has more than 50 million kids. And then I started thinking about Latin America. I'm Portuguese. I lived 6 years in Spain. One straight avenue could be Brazil, because we speak the same language as in Portugal, but my Spanish is also good. And I understood Brazil was super hard. A bit like the States, you have one standard curriculum per state. So there's not a national curriculum. And then I thought about the Spanish-speaking world. Mexico is big. Mexico has more than 30 million kids. But what if we could combine the entire of Latin America? I started making the math, and this would create the third largest region. After India, China would come Spanish-speaking Latin America with more than 100 million kids. And then I went and deep dove into the curriculums. Mexico was one single curriculum for the entire, all of the 32 states. And then all of the countries, both on the southern and northern hemisphere of Latin America, shared very similar curriculums. So if we back this with AI, we had a case to build content at scale, because building content usually it's expensive and takes time. But what kills a content model production is that you have to change it and standardize it for each of the new countries we launch. And at Luca, we found that we didn't have to do this, so we typically created a VC model that funds would love to back. So I set myself out to raise capital, and the funds that ended up investing into us, at least the first one, was an outreach from them. They were like, they liked the profile of the founder and the size of the market and how exciting it was, plus the momentum of COVID. And yeah, that's how we raised our first 2 million.
Oh, that's awesome. I love hearing that success. You know, raising capital has been a challenge, especially in US based companies. You know, Baiju did hurt that dramatically. A lot of the companies that invest in EdTech companies poured a lot of capital into Baiju. The companies that Baiju brought in, they did a good job bringing new people into that investment space, but then also tarnished that investment space for those new groups that they came in. So they did some good things and they did some really crappy things. One of the things that made me want to reach out and talk to you is you guys were selected for one of what I think is the most prestigious rewards or opportunities to have access to in the education technology space, which is the GSV Cup. You guys were top 3 qualifiers there. Walk us through that process. You know, what made you think that, or what do you believe you guys did right so you could stand out with the most talented EdTech companies in the world?
Yeah, I agree. GSV, for those that are listening to us and don't know it, it's backed by GSV. It's the largest EdTech fund out there, from California, and then also backed by Google and the University of Arizona. So the way the process goes by is they select 1,000 companies, and then throughout an application form, they cut those 1,000 to a fifth, so to 200. By that stage, you are like sending a 3-minute video and filling up some questions. And we made it there. And then they cut it by 10, so from 200 it goes to 20. And the process is still offline, so you don't have to travel to California. And you get to 20, and then you get an email saying you got selected to the last 20. So that's already a good achievement. And then you go to San Diego to this very big like fair with more than 5,000 people. Each time that you talk, there's a lot of people talking, and they give you like time to pitch your company. And then there's a very qualified jury of people. On that year, this was 2023. It was like 8 guys, most of them founders of EdTech unicorns or companies worth more than $500 million. And you get very like specific and smart questions. And then from that, you go to the final. So from 20, you get to 3. And then the final, I think they are changing the model, but it's more like an idol, like a contest show format, because the voters are not experts anymore, but the general public. So you are pitching in front of thousands of people, and then there's a little device or an app, I think, and you just go and you select. So other factors play in, but yeah, we ranked 3 in the final. It it was great. It helps building the brand and the name of the company, and yeah, and it was a great experience by some funds we admire.
Who was the three finalists in the year that you guys qualified in?
It was us, a company from the US that does preventive mental health for kids below 14, so to prevent depression and suicidal, basically on being very proactive in diagnosing that. And then a company out of Mexico, I know the founder, that they do training for blue collar works at companies.
That's awesome. It's such an amazing opportunity. Congratulations on doing that. You know, I feel like
Thanks.
you have to have your crap together in order to get there. Deborah at GSV is
Yeah, Deborah was there delivering the
ahead of
prize.
ahead of
Michael
the
Moe.
space. You know, she really understands the education space. She really puts a lot of time and effort into it. Um,
Yeah, it's a
what
mix
are
of the
some of the
potential of the company and then pitching your ability to pitch in front of people also counts a lot. It's true that it's not only judged by the numbers of the company, but also like it's a competition.
that's awesome. What are some of the things that you're looking forward to with Luca? What do you see the next 2 years look like for you? And which direction do you think you're going to focus on, especially being AI driven?
So in terms
You
of
answering it.
how we are growing the company, we are adding more grades. So we started by grades 1 to 6 primary school, and now we are adding secondary school, which is grades 7 to 9, and also adding more subjects. AI helped us basically producing content faster. We also have some applications of AI in the platform for teachers, but to answer your question, AI gave us the speed like 8 times. We are building content 8 times faster than we were before. In the last 4 months, for example, we
Oh,
built
wow.
from scratch for those 6 grades a full module of international math with the Singapore method, an English program to learn English as a second language, and a reading comprehension program. So this
Interesting.
removed one of the barriers of one of the bottlenecks, which was to build content. So now it's easier for everyone, but you need to know what you're building. And we are kind of leveraging that speed. And we are now within the next 6 months building those 3 additional grades in 8 new subjects.
That's awesome. I love the English as a second language market. I think there's a huge opportunity there to grow businesses. I've talked to a few people that are focusing on that over the last 6 months. And, you know, I think every person has their own unique way to find market share. And I think that space is so huge with a huge opportunity that it's going to be successful for everybody. One of the things, though, you are growing globally. I like to ask this question at the very end. How do you use your network to grow your business? And what's something you would recommend to a young entrepreneur that
You mean
really doesn't know
the
how to
network
utilize their
of the
network?
users of the business, or my personal network to grow in? Oh, okay.
Your personal
Um,
network.
I think to start it off, it was great. I think I got into a stage after 3 years where now I'm getting those requests of people that are starting, and I'm super happy, and I do it with in a very proactive way, because that's what I did in the beginning. So I went to most of my friends or people that I've worked with at Uber, Morgan Stanley, you name it, and just reached out to their network. And people usually are happy to help, especially if they like you or if they trust you. So I think
Yes.
as a founder, I think the main skill you need and also that you develop is problem solving. So I don't know, I had no idea how to build videos, and once we raised a round, I had to build a shitload of content, and hiring like motion graphers and producers, but I had no idea. So you just learn to like crack a problem from the beginning and then try to fix it within the timeline. And yeah, so I think the first learning is that people are usually very welcome to help you. And the second one is that probably in the beginning your network might be able to solve or help you in the direction of solving problems for you, and fundraising is a big one.
Yeah, starting off early on, it definitely is. It's something that I've built multiple businesses, and fundraising is
I like
something
it.
that I don't wake up excited to go do every day.
Yeah, I like it.
It's something you do. I love building, solving the problems within the company. That's where I love. But it's such a important part of the business, raising capital, especially if you want to grow and scale and become a future unicorn. It's just
Yeah,
something you've got to get good
yeah. It
at,
gets in a way sometimes
regardless of
of
how you
selling
feel
more
about
or
it.
building better products,
Um,
but you got to do it.
yeah, and I think you'd agree with me that when you get to go and focus on the core elements of the operations of your company, you see tremendous things happen. But when you're having to spend so much time, or, for those other companies that may not have raised capital as fast, it really pulls you away from the
Yeah,
key functionalities of what makes your company special,
definitely, definitely.
to focus on those things, those roles. But as a founder, that feels like, maybe they're not providing enough value to their team because they are spending so much time raising capital. That is a key thing to the company's success. So, don't feel like
Hmm.
you're not participating or you're providing value in your role. But Frederico, I really enjoyed talking with you. I'd love to have you on the show, maybe do another episode a little bit longer, schedule a little bit more time next time. I think you've got an amazing story, and I think that our listeners could learn a lot from you. So I'd love to have you on again, and thank you so much for the time that you gave us today.
No, thank you for the opportunity, and looking forward to
And thank you for
having
being
you again.
understanding with our technical difficulty this morning.
Yeah, no worries.
We'll talk soon. Enjoy the rest of your
Yeah,
day.
yeah, you too. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.